Welcome back to A Scotch and a Beer, everybody. I hope you had a great new year. Let's get rid of that shit show that was 2020 and ring in a new year that should hopefully be slightly less shit showish. It's a hard word to say, by the way. In the last episode, I went over everything that led up to and in between getting from Atlanta down to Orlando, and now we are finally arriving in Miami where the story picks up. In this episode, I'll be going over the trials and or tribulations that had to do with Formula Drift Miami in 2014, where I get my first qualifying score, lose yet another team member, and have some epic pre and or post-game activities with Jaywood Media, Fredric Aasbo, and Tyler Wolfson and crew. But first, a Scotch and a beer. For the beer, I chose a small pivo brewery. Pivo is beer in Czech, for those of you that don't know. And this one is called the Albrecht Premium Czech Lager, established in 1278. That is a solid standard lager. Craft beer places are kind of new to the Czech Republic. Normally you have all the standard beers that you would get. So all these smaller craft brews are popping up, which is really awesome because they usually taste a lot better, and this one does. Now for the Scotch, and since I didn't want to buy an entire bottle again of Scotch that I would just leave here and it would be sitting for a year and not get any use out of it, until the next time I came back, I decided to go with another small boy and get some of the Glenfiddich cask collection in a tiny bottle. Although this tiny bottle was still 20 bucks, so it better be worthwhile. Let's crack her open. Now, pro tip, and if you saw the last video, if you refill these with alcohol, put the cap back on them and put them in a toiletries bag. They are under the required ounceage for air travel. Security won't say anything. You're not supposed to drink these on airplanes, but hey, if you ask for a cup of ice or a cup of water and you mix it in with it, then hey, who's to say? You just pop it out, dump it in, put it back. Pro tip. Makes air travel a lot cheaper. Like, it smells like if you take a rose petal and you crush it between your fingers, there's that very distinct like rose petal and burning flesh smell. That's kind of what I get out of this, so let's give her a try. It's really good. It tastes like drinking a bouquet of flowers. I don't know how to describe that in words. It's very light, it's very lofty, it's sweet, but it tastes like what flowers smell like. Of course, mixed with alcohol, but damn fine dram. So, getting right back to the story. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, that this was going to be the first ever season running Pro 1 and Pro 2 concurrently. And since it was kind of a test season, they allowed all of the Pro 1 drivers to drive in Pro 2 if they so chose. Now, being a rookie who had never driven any of these tracks before, I had decided pre-season that I would do all of the Pro 2 rounds as well, just to get the extra seat time. Turns out I didn't get to drive much at most of them, but I paid for them anyway. Now, that was a huge extra cost, basically doubling the entry fees for 4 rounds out of the series. Now, that being said, if you want to run a full season of Formula Drift Pro, so that's 7 to 8 rounds depending on the season, depending on what's happening in the world with the coronavirus and whatnot, you can probably expect to pay around 10 grand in entry fees if you are paying per event. Like, if you don't know if you're going to do the whole season and you want to pay for the whole event, you end up doing the whole season, it'll end up costing you around $10,000 to $11,000 for entry fees. That's not including the extra practice days. So add $500 onto each one of those, and that will give you your total price. So that's a lot of extra money. Now, double that basically, and that's what your per round for Pro 2 is. So Pro 2 entry fees I think were just a little bit less, but they're still really expensive. So I wrote Formula Drift a check for $11,500 for entry fees for the 2014 season. Now this included all of the paid practices, Pro 1 and Pro 2. So that is a huge chunk of change for committing to this race series that I had no idea how I was going to do it, and now had done 2 rounds and had done absolute shit. Now you do get a small discount for doing it that way, which is the reason why I did it. And I didn't want to get halfway through the season and be like, oh, I can't make it to Seattle because I can't afford the entry fee. So I wanted to get all that out of the way, so at least I could go to all of the rounds in some way, shape, or form. Now, this episode is kind of going to be a preview into multiple reasons why I wasn't able to get to Formula Drift New Jersey, and they were all financial caused reasons. Now, in my Whiskey Garage Chronicles video for No Jersey, I said that the car was having too many issues and we wanted to go back and fix it. That definitely wasn't the case. The only thing having issues was my wallet and my soul at that point. But I'll kind of summarize those after I get done with Florida, because the extra financial burden didn't hit me until right after Florida, which made our decision not to do Jersey a very easy one. So fresh off of hanging out with some super good people in Orlando, actually getting some testing done in the car, feeling somewhat confident about actually driving it at a professional drift competition, jwoodmedia.com and I packed up the rig and we made the 4.5-hour drive across the Florida Panhandle from Orlando to Miami. So it's now Wednesday and we are now supposed to go pick up Aoki from the airport, and Aoki has missed his flight. In a rush of desperation, because he's literally my only other team member, I had to rebook him another flight at the wonderful cost of around $850. Now, I always book my tickets in advance and I look for the best deals, and I think I got his round trip the first time for around $250. Now I'm over $1,000 deep into his plane ticket and I'm not super pumped about it. That was a large chunk of change for me. Like I said, I didn't have any money to spare, so stuff after this point actually started going all on credit cards, and this is kind of where everything took a turn and started to suck even more than it already did. So I had, I would say, $5,000 to $8,000 of like buffer money that I had set for myself for things that would go wrong, for breakages, for truck fixes, for etc, etc, etc. I should have doubled that, but I didn't have double that money. So every single time I had to spend $1,000, I could only spend $1,000 10 times. Like, that's it for the whole season. And I had already exceeded that at this point. So that one really hurt financially. That was number A in the reasons why I didn't get to go to New Jersey. But on the flip side of that, he was the only remaining team member. He'd stuck with us to this point, and mistakes happen. Like, I get it. I will eat it, and he will make it, and we will be A-okay. So we crash out at the hotel, we pick up Aoki early in the morning, and we have a couple of hours to kill in between picking Aoki up and when paid practice starts on that Thursday. So like any normal team would do, we went and played miniature golf at this super epic mini golf place somewhere near Miami, and Jay Wood captured one of the most epic montages that we've had in a Whiskey Garage Chronicles video, which I will showcase while I'm talking about doing it. It was super fun, and we all sucked, and we made it look really cool. It was a very good time. It was nice to actually unwind. After that, we headed over to a Tommy recommended spot and went to Hot and Juicy, where they served me up some extra spicy, meaning probably just spit-in sauce, and it wasn't very spicy at all. It was slightly harder than ketchup. But hey, E for effort, right? Everything seemed to be going decently for once. The team morale was okay. I was not worried about the car being an absolute shit show We got to do testing. And on top of all of that, I think the biggest change for this event for me was we weren't rushing to get anywhere. Like, we weren't showing up the day of the event after driving 30 plus hours to get there, tired as hell, haggard, not stoked. We were well rested and we were in good spirits for once. Actually, we were in good spirits the whole time, regardless of all this shit that was happening. But, you know, it just felt different inside, silently. Little did I know that the very next day things would go south rather quickly. Here's again where a lack of communication and me being kind of wrapped up in the moment and not thinking about other things and repercussions would come back to bite me in the ass yet again. Now, my ideals of a pro race team were pretty simple. Show up on time, work as hard as you can, basically pretend like it's a real race team so that the moment that we become a real race team and can actually start making money, we will be a well-oiled machine. And again, I was hoping that the other teams would be a super good example for what we were supposed to be, and that was never the case. Again, should have explained this to everybody, didn't. Now again, I'm not paying my guys, but technically I am because I'm paying for flights, I'm paying for food, I'm paying for hotels, and I'm asking for some of their time. So all of that is X worth of value, and I understand that they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, and I should have appreciated that more. Especially when everybody else had quit and only a few people were staying, aka Jesse and Aoki. Now, it didn't help that he missed his flight and cost me an extra $1,000 because I had budgeted everything to a T, and every single little thing that happened was extremely catastrophic for me. Now, I know you're probably like, well, Dan, racing is expensive, dude. I don't think you understand what you were getting into. And I absolutely didn't. That's the whole freaking point of this. I had no way of knowing how expensive this was. Most of the drivers hide this shit. If they're struggling, they last a season. If they have some sort of support from families or from big sponsors or from some other form of money, then they do just fine. As long as you can weather the storm and stay in FD for, I would say, 4 years minimum. 4 seasons, you will do well in Formula Drift. If you cannot make it 4 seasons, you shouldn't be doing Formula D. Like, that's just how it is. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was gung-ho to try to make it happen. Anyway, post-lunch and getting a couple of hole-in-ones later, we head out to the epic track that is Homestead Speedway in Miami, Florida. Now, this is a gigantic NASCAR facility, huge banks, huge grandstands all the way around. There's a freaking lake. There's super nice buildings everywhere. There's garages that are closed. There's garages that are open. Like, this is the nicest interior of a track that I've ever seen. So Texas Motor Speedway is a NASCAR track as well, but it's just flat and open, all on the inside of the track. This one was like a small city inside of the track with its own lake where Daigo Saito went fishing and caught a goddamn fish. Like, running events, I can't imagine how much it would cost to rent that place for a day of drifting. Now, I'll get into that in 2015, which is quite a few Scotch and a beers down the road, when we went and filmed Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 4 at that very track, and I'll tell you exactly how much it cost to rent, which was astronomically fucking high. Now, like every other track we've been to, the bottom of the barrel, back of the pack folks are kind of on the other side of this building, and all the cool kids are on the main side of this big pit area. So all of us rejects and guys that shouldn't be there, and dudes that aren't doing too well in points, and guys that had just showed up, and all of the Pro 2 guys are all kind of shoved in this back area. We set up our pits in the afternoon and everything is looking okay. And as you can tell, I'm kind of delaying the inevitable here because I don't really want to talk about this, because this is not one of my proudest moments as a human being, and like, I don't like that I did this. So anyway, as we are finishing unpacking and getting everything ready to go, Aoki comes up to me and says, my girlfriend is sick. and possibly dying. I need to leave. And instead of being like, oh dude, I'm so sorry, that's horrible, let me try to get you some way to the airport, let me get you an Uber, let me get you something, some sort of recourse. I had zero empathy for this kid. And Aoki, I'm sorry about this. This was a horrible, horrible thing to do on my side. So again, I apologize for being such a fucking asshole. So instead of empathizing with the kid, I went into kind of a selfish rage. I was blaming everything and everyone and all of this shit about my season so far on other people instead of myself. And I really lashed out at the kid. And I was like, dude, I just spent so much extra fucking money to get you to this place. You missed your fucking flight. And now you want another one to go home before the event even starts. And I'm like, absolutely fucking not. Like, full dickhead mode. I can't fly you home. I don't have any money to fly you home. You're on your own, dude. And I'm not saying that I should have paid for Aoki's flight back home, but I could have done more to help him get there. That's neither here nor there. I don't think he expected me to pay for his flight home, but I definitely could have done more as a human being to help another human being out. And instead I just kind of ignored it, swept it under the rug, and hoped it'd go away. I was like, it's just gonna be Jay Wood and I. Jay Wood's my media guy. He is not my tire changer, my mechanic, my crew chief, my spotter, or anything else. Like, I can't do professional competition with one person. You're super leaving me high and dry here, dude. Again, being selfish as fuck. On the flip side to that, since it was just Jay Wood and I, there was no way that we could leave, take him to the airport, back from the airport in time for practice. Practice started in like 45 minutes and we didn't have resources. I didn't have a big team of people that could just shrug off their duties for the team and go take somebody to the airport and back. And like, all of these thoughts are going through my head and I'm just like, fuck. So I went over and asked Tyler Wolfson if any of his guys, because he came with 3 different people. And I asked if any of his guys could take one of my guys to the airport, and he said no, practice starts in 45 minutes. So I went to Jeff Jones and asked Jeff Jones if any of his dudes could take somebody to the airport, and got the same answer. And then this is when I kind of quit trying. Like, I was so angry and so upset that I was having to waste time doing this when we could be getting ready for practice and being a professional race team, that I didn't think about this poor kid whose girlfriend was back home dying. So Tyler Wolfson makes a post on Facebook asking if anybody can get Aoki to the airport, and I do absolutely nothing. My effort included me going to those other teams, and that was it. Like, I didn't want to do anything else after that. In my head, I'm justifying it like I sacrificed fucking everything to be here. I've wasted the first 2 rounds of competition. I cannot do that for this one. I need every ounce of practice I can get. I don't need all of this stress and extra shit to deal with while I'm trying to focus on being a professional driver. And I'm putting that in air quotes because I was just a dick. So I'm thinking of this the complete wrong way. Like, hey, we're part of a professional race team. You should put that first above all else. Even though we were a shitty fucking grassroots team that had not qualified once and probably wasn't going to qualify for the rest of the season. Why was I so selfish? I don't know. I was wrapped up in the moment, like I said earlier. So I'm like, you wanted to be on a pro team, now you're leaving the pro team, you're on your own. Bottom of the line. Anger can definitely change the way that a person sees a situation. So at times like that, when that does happen, if you do decide to do pro competition, be empathetic towards your team, be empathetic towards your crew members, treat them like human fucking beings. Again, not proud of that moment in my life. And again, Aoki, I'm sorry. Luckily, Keith from Factory Edge had floated him the money to fly home, because I wasn't giving him any because I didn't have any to give. So after asking like 3 teams for help and putting in 0.001% of effort, we go out for practice. And in my head, I'm like, man, I really hope he's not there when I get back because it's just making me super angry. And this is not the headspace I want to be in while I'm trying to learn this brand new course that nobody's ever driven yet. And it's just, everything's weighing heavily on me, and I just want the situation to be over by the time I get back. Now, he did end up getting a ride back to the airport via one of Von Gittin Jr.'s many crew. I think Von comes with like 15 fucking people sometimes. So luckily, he was able to spare somebody and get Aoki back to the airport for his flight out that day. And that was all while we were at practice. So I was kind of thankful for that when we did get back and he wasn't there. So within 3 rounds of Formula Drift competition, I had lost 3 of my 5 team members, including myself. Jesse would be taking on all hats for this event. And by all hats, I mean he was the media guy, so he had to pump out a video not only just for me, but I think he was helping Tommy with footage and Lauren and HD with footage. Now he was also making an overview video for himself for his reel. So he had a lot of work to do on the media side of things. And he now had to change my tires. And he now had to be an impromptu mechanic, which he isn't. And he had to be a spotter and text me what I was doing wrong on the course while he was out there doing his media stuff. Thank you so much, Jay Wood, for sticking with me to this point. You are a god amongst men, and you handled the situation like, yeah, whatever, dude, no big deal. I'll just make it happen, right? So I'm sorry for throwing all of that on you, but you are a goddamn champion, and I am eternally grateful to you. Thank you so much for being rad as fuck. Now the course at FD Miami was new to everyone, so that was kind of more of a level playing field, and I was kind of excited about that until I actually drove the course. Now I'm going to put up a little track map of it here and kind of explain what everything was. It was a super short run up into a 90-degree left-hand turn that was very tight radius, then a long, basically straightaway into a 45, and then down through this little chicane, down a hill, and up. Now we run through a few laps of practice, and immediately the car is super underpowered. Like, I am having a huge problem linking that first straightaway. Like, we are pumping the tires up to like 75 PSI and I still can't make it happen. The car's gotta be like 380 to 400 and it is just barely a rolling burnout, and I'm straightening and having to reinitiate and it looks ugly. So the car's not breaking up, but it doesn't have enough power to actually do the freaking course. The steering is feeling okay, so that is kind of a non-issue. I'm learning to kind of drive through the sticky points and just keep going, and that's fine. We don't have horsepower at this point, and it's super disheartening. So I'm watching these 800 to 1,000 horsepower cars just make this huge fucking beeline. Like, after you initiate it in, it was a rolling burnout for those high horsepower cars, and they could just left foot brake the living shit out of that turn and make it happen. Whereas with me, I'm sitting here at the top of third gear, just barely even having any wheel spin and not making it to the edge and having to e-brake 300 feet just to get to the inner clipping point. The rest of the course feels fine. I downshift into second and can do that chicane, and everything is peaches and gravy. That's disgusting. And then the heavens open and it starts to freaking rain. And I'm like, oh my God. Unlike Atlanta, I want this. I need this in my life right now. This is the best thing that's happened yet. And it dumped. And I'm just like, yes, let's fucking go. And able to link the course, no fucking problem. Hitting the clipping points, everything is dandy. Plus, Jaywood doesn't have to change tires, so Jaywood's able to do media, and we just go. And I do lap after lap after lap after lap, and I'm starting to actually feel good about the course in the wet. And I was trying to get the line dialed so that if I did have to do it in the dry, maybe I could make it work from muscle memory and just being on the exact right points and, you know, just dialing that line in. And right before paid practice ended, it stopped raining altogether. There was a lot of water still on the track, and I was like, cool, this is sick. Pro 2 qualifying is in like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and if the track stays wet, I will be okay. So we head back to the pits. We try to put more air in the tires, and my compressor won't put any more than 75 psi in the tires. Now I was driving in the wet like that, which was slippery, but still fun. And I was actually having a good time. Spirits were a little bit higher as long as it stayed wet. I'm like, fuck it, we'll do Formula D with one team member who does literally everything. So we slap a new set of tires on. I think there was a driver's meeting that we had to go to in that brief intermission between when we were sitting and waiting. And we go to the Pro 2 driver's meeting, then we head out for qualification. In the driver's meeting, they announced that we would be qualifying by alphabetical order because there was no ranking for any of the Pro 2 drivers at this point, and my last name is a B, so I'm like, sick! It's still gonna be wet out when I go. And like 3 dudes in, somebody goes blasting off the track, breaks a bunch of aero, and we get delayed while they're pulling him out. And I'm just like, oh, shit. And as I'm sitting in the line waiting to go, I think there was like 6 or 7 dudes in front of me. The track started making more and more smoke. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. This is not good. This is not good. And I get up, I head out for my first qualification lap in the first Pro 2 event of ever. And I straighten out on the straightaway twice. I reinitiate into the turn and do the back section. 0. Sick. I go over to the Hankook booth. I'm like, dudes, can you please put any more PSI in? We added another 20 PSI to my tires. So we went from 75 to 95 PSI. And I head back out to the line and give her a go. Smash down the straight, enter in. I make the turn, but because I wasn't used to the amount of speed I would have with 95 freaking PSI in my tires, I blow past the inner clip and have to straighten and ruin the lap again. Goose eggs for old Officer Dan in the first Pro 2 qualification he's ever had. Sick. Now, at least I had kind of a solution for if it was going to be dry tomorrow. I could pump the tires up to like 100 PSI and I should be okay to actually link the course together and make a qualifying run work. It'll be my first one in Formula D if I'm able to do so, at the risk of not having any grip whatsoever. If I do get into tandem battle with somebody, there's no way I would even move on. So it's like, all right, well, a qualifying score would be nice though at this point. Now, you keep in mind that I don't have a crew chief or a mechanic or a tuner or anybody that knows anything. So I go around and I'm kind of asking if anybody's familiar with AEM, but it's like, yes, Formula D teams will loan you tools, they'll loan you parts, they'll loan you like basic mechanic help. But when it comes to tuning a car, ain't nobody gonna tune your car, because like then it's all on them if something fucks up with your tune and you blow a motor. It's like they don't want that responsibility. And I got told that multiple times over when asking for help on how we could turn the car up. And that's totally understandable. I needed help, and the help wasn't available to have. So there was no way we could turn the power up. Just wasn't happening. Now, Dan from Raw Brokerage was supposed to come down and help from Orlando and kind of be the crew chief mechanic, help us turn the boost up, etc., etc., etc. But it just so happens that that weekend he was having a baby. So he couldn't make it, and there was just zero way we could get the car to make more horsepower, other than putting air in the tires. The car was still running, it wasn't wrecked, and we hung up our hats knowing that we could give it our best effort the next day for Pro 1 qualification. Then we head back to the hotel, slightly dejected about the day's happenings, but still happy overall. Now, Jesse and I hit the hotel that night solo mission and decided to go hang out with a good buddy of mine, Mr. Fredric Aasbo, aka the Norwegian Jawline. So Aasbo picks a small rock and roll bar not too far from the hotel, so we decide to walk. And of course, Florida being Florida, about halfway through our walk to this bar, it starts freaking pouring rain, so we dip into this super nice hotel, and we're just kind of waiting for the rain to subside, and the guy inside's like, yo, it's not gonna stop. It's Florida. You guys are fucked. And so he's like, well, take these trash bags, we can cut holes in the arms, and you guys can make it to that bar. So sure as shit, that's what we did. We popped holes through the ends, we both had our trash bags on. So we make it to the bar, we hang our trash bags up on the coat racks, we go order some tasty beverages. Jesse, Fredric, and I start playing pinball, we're rocking out, we're kicking back summer shandies. Jesse's tilting the machine from hitting the buttons too hard, and we just have a good time, and I needed this in my life to kind of unwind from the day's happenings. We chat about stuff and just hang out. It's just us, nobody cares that we're there, it's no stress, it was a fantastic evening. After that, we redonned our sick AF rain gear and headed back to the hotel for some much needed Z's. And that is where I'm going to end this story. In the next episode, our two-man team tries to tackle Formula D Pro 1 qualification in a 380 horsepower car. You can only imagine how that went. Tyler Wolfson loans us some of his crew members and is a true gem amongst humans to allow us to kind of end up pitting with him so that we could use his resources as well. On top of that, we Google the least starred strip club in Florida and decide as a large group to go ahead and go to said strip club just to kind of see what it would be, and we meet some unexpected friends there. So stay tuned for the next episode for Pro 1 qualifying, the rest of Formula D Florida, and the afterwards antics that kind of went on, which was a lot of stuff. It was super fun. I love you all. Happy New Year, Officer Dan.